This night, Maundy Thursday in the life of the church has come to be one of my favorites. I've always said that I know it sounds a little bit weird, but tonight we begin the Triduum, or the great 3 days that take us on a journey with Jesus and his disciples as they're in Jerusalem, and tonight they eat their last meal together. And tomorrow Jesus is arrested, tried, condemned, and crucified for all to see. Most people would label these days in the life of the church depressing, and you might be right. They are certainly more somber days, but they are also necessary days because without them, what we experience together on Sunday at Easter would mean nothing. Our readings for Maundy Thursday are always the same readings year after year, and they're always set against one another. Our reading from Exodus is part of the Passover story where Moses and Aaron are getting instructions on how they are to share the Passover meal with the people of Israel. They are to make a dinner and to consume it all the same night, no leftovers for this one. The bread shall be unleavened without yeast because they're going to have to flee quickly. There's no time for it to rise. The Lord will pass over the houses of the Israelites who sprinkle the doorposts with lamb's blood as the firstborn children in Egypt are to be killed. Every year, the people of Israel are to mark the festival of Passover and teach it to their children. In 1 Corinthians, St. Paul gives us what we know to be the words of institution in the communion part of our liturgy and reminds us that as often as we eat this bread and drink this cup, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And then we come to the Gospel of John. In chapter 13, Jesus is having a meal with his disciples. It isn't the Passover meal that Exodus recounts, and like Paul tells us, there are no words of institution. The events of this meal happen before the festival of the Passover, but with all of the readings focusing on meals, Maundy Thursday is one night in the life of the church where the meal of Holy Communion is lifted up in a pretty significant way. As I've reflected again on this reading from John's Gospel, I've come to a new conclusion this year. This is all a huge waste of time. One of the things that we know about Jesus in the Gospel of John is that he's hit the major leagues. He's large, he's in charge, he knows everything that's going to happen to him over the next 2 days that we spend together in church. Verse 1 of our reading tells us this much. Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from the world and to go to the Father. And then in verse 2, the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. It's open and shut, really. If we needed more proof, then verse 3, Jesus knows that the Father, that's God, has given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going to God. And if Jesus knew all this, then he's just wasting his last hours. All of this stuff hits the fan. You could argue he's even wasting the disciples' time, though they don't know that yet. And if all of what Jesus knows is true and it all comes from God, that's got to say something, then why in the blazes does he waste time doing what Jesus does next? Why does he waste time washing the feet of the disciples and talking about this love business? We wouldn't. If we were Jesus and we knew all of that, you'd better believe that we'd go to the police and tell them that Judas is going to betray us, and then we'd go to the tabloids and tell them of the intrigue of the betrayal and the denial of the disciples. After this meal, Peter will deny Jesus, and during this meal, Jesus will point out Judas, his betrayer, to the disciples, but they won't understand, and Judas will go out to do what he's going to do. He'll leave the community, and he'll leave the relationship with Jesus. We would point all of that out because we absolutely despise betrayal. It hurts, it stings, and we can't get over it so easily. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a favorite German theologian of mine, is famous for saying that we are continually surprised by sin, even though it's as common in us as in others. But John doesn't seem to dwell on these questions. He makes a move to focus on the rest of the story and the greater peace, which is Jesus' love. As is usually true with God and Jesus, they don't focus on our sin, but on their love for us. We get Jesus in the flesh showing us who he is and who we are to be for one another. Jesus gets up from reclining with his 12 disciples at the table, takes off his outer robe and ties a towel around himself. He pours water into a basin and washes the disciples' feet and wipes them with a towel that's around him. Instead of rushing to other people, the police, or the tabloids to expose the hearts of his disciples, including Judas and Peter, Jesus reveals himself as the one who loved his own who were in the world even until the end. And he becomes like a servant to them, because servants are not greater than their masters. Peter can understand this, though, and he hates the thought of Jesus doing what a servant should do. After all, their feet are probably disgusting. Mud is caked on them, maybe animal dung too, for all they know. Their toenails could have been horribly long or curled under, and who knows what type of infection he might see. Servants would be used to this, but not Jesus. Peter scoffs, saying something like, "Lord, you're kidding. There's no way that you're going to wash my feet. It's too low for you, too embarrassing. Not to mention, it's just not what we do." But Jesus responds, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." It's like saying, unless you take the position of someone at the bottom of society, then you can't know me or be a part of my work in the world. And so then over the top, Peter then says, "Well, wash all of me then. The more, the better." Jesus washes and makes clean all of the disciples, all 12 of them, even though he foreshadows that one of them, the one we know as Judas, is not clean. I think too often in the life of the church, we rush into the next part of the story where Jesus explains that he's acting as an example to the disciples, and that if he can do it for them, then they can do it for others. And then he gives them the new commandment, even though it isn't really new. The new commandment is for the disciples to love one another as Jesus has loved them. It's not new because Jesus talks about love all the time. But what is new is how they are to love. They are to love as Jesus did in all 3 of the years that he's been with them. Love is to do the things that we might despise. Love is to love, even those who might betray you, even those who might work against you, even those who might not care about love. It's not to be reckless. It's not to cause harm to one another, but to love is to forgive. And in John, to love is to know Jesus. But I want us to dwell just a little longer with this idea of foot washing. Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Vigil are experiential days, not necessarily explanatory days. There's something real about washing someone's feet. There is something real because in that act it is to care for another's body, their hopes, their dreams, their desires, their lives. As Jesus washed the disciples' feet, it was an act of love that forgave them and said, "You all still matter." Deborah Murphy writes this for tonight. Jesus sinks down to the lowliest of places to reveal not only the nature of servant leadership in the kingdom, but the very meaning of his death. Into the chaos and confusion of human existence, the God of heaven stoops to dwell. Into deceit and double dealing, into the misery, fraud, and loneliness of our small lives. Into this and so much more, the Word became flesh and lived among us, full of grace and full of truth. Your friends, God sent Jesus into the world not to die, but to love. And if that's a waste of time, then I thank God that Jesus is willing to waste time and to call us to do the same. If caring for the fullness of someone else, even the folks who drive us crazy and we want to strangle sometimes, is a waste of time, well, then I'm going to waste time. Someone fully cared for is someone who is changed. And once you're changed by Jesus and his love, then your life and the world will be transformed. That's what the washing of feet will do. It's only after the washing of the feet that Good Friday and Easter Sunday will make any sense whatsoever. So, let's waste time together and get prepared to continue being disciples. All you need is a towel and a basin and some water. Ready, set, go.